Charlie, back to you both.
Thanks, Matt.
Coming up to 7:15. Now, we are paying more than ever before to insure our cars. You probably don't need us to tell you that.
Peter's been investigating how the numbers are working out. It is hurting a lot of people. This isn't
so
young drivers
noticeable.
particularly.
I think it's because we are at a time now where certain price rises are easing a little bit. But car insurance costs, it's getting worse, which is what's so difficult for people, isn't it? Good morning, everyone. It can be a really worrying moment when that renewal quote drops, you open it and you go, and as I say, it's getting worse. So here's a scary stat for you. Last year, the average car insurance premium, well, it rocketed by 25%. What does that mean? Well, let's rewind back to between October and December 2022. Then, the average cover, well, that would have cost you about £470. A year later, the very same premium, look at that go up, £627 now. Now, that hike is being blamed on extra costs for the insurers themselves. So we're talking about high payouts for vehicle thefts, longer repair times, and also the increased cost of labour and parts for those repairs. And it's younger drivers who are suffering the most, 17 to 20-year-olds even, with eye-wateringly high premiums. Look at that. Drivers like 19-year-old Stefan, who bought his car last month and then had to sell it a few days later because of the high quotes he was getting for cover.
I had a 1.4 litre Alfa Romeo and not even 100 horsepower, and I was getting quotes from 700, 800 a month. And if you get lucky, that might be with Black Box, and there's only 3 or 4 insurance companies willing to insure me. So it's very devastating. I mean, I'm not able to do certain things like hanging out with my friends, or sometimes even going to the gym becomes hard. But the most important one is getting to work. Getting to work is 10 minutes by car, but ever since I've sold my car, I now have to cycle to work for about 20, 30 minutes. My shifts can start as early in the morning as 6 in the morning. So you can imagine what time I have to now wake up at to make sure I get there in time.
Stefan there with a reminder of the impact these higher costs are having. So that's the problem. Is there a solution? Let's speak to Stuart Masson, founder and editor of Car Expert. So hopefully you might have the answers. Is there a secret to nabbing low premiums, or is it just good old-fashioned shopping around?
Unfortunately, no, there's no big secret. It is shopping around. So what you need to do is know when your premium's going to renew. So do this today, go and look up what date your premium will end, mark a date in your calendar a month before, and start shopping around getting quotes. So when your renewal comes in and you die in horror at the figure on it, you can immediately go to your current insurer and say, no, have an argument, get it down, or go somewhere else. You could spend an hour doing this once a year and save hundreds of pounds.
So would you recommend calling your insurer and saying, actually, I've found this better deal elsewhere. Are you willing to match it? And that works?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's no loyalty in insurance. I've heard people say, I've been with my current insurer for 20 years. They don't care. And it doesn't matter. As long as you've got a valid policy and a legitimate claim, it doesn't matter whether you've been with your insurer for 20 years or 20 minutes. As long as you've got a valid claim, they treat you like a business, treat them exactly the same way.
Is it something we're going to have to just get used to, though? Because as Peter said, lots of things have started to come down. Inflation, it looks like, has peaked and is beginning to diminish. But do you think car insurance is stuck where it is?
It may come down slightly. It started going up before the pandemic in those ancient times, 2018, 2019. It then kind of stalled a bit. Some policies came down and it started going back up again. As Peter said, it's a big jump in the last year. Hopefully it'll sort of level out a bit and won't keep going up, but it's not going to start coming back down to pre-pandemic levels or even probably to where it was a year ago.
Stuart, are we being ripped off? I mean, is anyone checking that the prices that are, as you say, gone up 25%,
yep,
that does equate to the actual costs that the insurance companies are having to pay out? Do you know what I mean? Because
sure,
I think absolutely. A lot of people listening to this think fundamentally
how they're justifying
we're being ripped off.
Look, if you sit back and don't shop around and let it auto renew, you're probably being ripped off, because you could, with minimal effort, save a load of money on your premium. There are legitimate reasons, as Peter said, why premiums are going up. car values over the last few years have gone up. Car prices have gone up a long way. Used car values have been very high. So the value of your car is higher, so the cost to insure it is higher. The cost of repairs has gone up. The cost of paying staff at body shops and so on has gone up. So there are legitimate costs, but there are also excuses. And if you, like a lot of industries, if you just let your subscription or your policy auto-renew, you are always going to pay top dollar, and you can so easily get it down a bit.
Worth saying, so the Association of British Insurers, they sort of say, look, we get the scale of this problem. Interestingly, the regulator this week, they wrote to MPs and said, look, we're aware this is one of the really big things that's going on and we're going to monitor this. The trouble is they can't sort of control the price, but they can make sure we're getting fair value, and that's probably what they're going to be looking at possibly in the,
and
in the
as
next
we
few
know, in
months
lots
and
of
years.
industries, if one organisation raises prices slightly, then others go to match it. I just wanted to ask about black boxes, because that seems to be pretty prevalent now, especially for younger drivers.
Indeed, for younger drivers in particular, it's often the only way they can get insurance. But even a lot of drivers, I was talking to my taxi driver last night, and he said, no, they were forced to take an app on their phone which monitors how they're driving, and they're rubbish. It was basically telling him he was a terrible driver. He's like, I've been driving for 20 years. I've been fine. I've had no problems, no fines, no accidents, and you're telling me I'm a bad driver?
Maybe he thinks he's a brilliant driver, or the box is saying otherwise.
Do we know if the flip side of this is that there are many more uninsured drivers on the road? Is that almost automatically, wrongly, of course, is that inevitably what's going to happen?
There is a concern that that's happening. I don't know if there's the data to really back that up yet, but there is concern that people are either not taking insurance, or they're underinsured, or they're only taking third party, or they're lying about their insurance and their situation to try and get their premiums down, which is also a terrible idea.
Such a shame for young people, isn't it, trying to enter the workplace? Yeah, thank you.
I feel so sorry for Stefan. Stuart, thank you so much for joining us. Stuart Masson, founder and editor of the Car Expert website. And we're really keen to hear from you on this one. So what's your experience of car insurance costs? Have you had to sell your car like Stefan? Or have you managed to get a good deal? Maybe we can give people at home some ideas. You can get in touch with us in all the usual ways. Details on the screen now. We'll go through some of your comments a little bit later.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Time now is 7:20. So let's go back to our main story now, the corrosive substance attack in Clapham, South London.
And the stage version of Fawlty Towers will be in London's West End from May.
9:25. So we're talking about car insurance now. Peter, this is only bad news. It just seems to get worse all the time, doesn't it?
I was thinking of car insurance when Basil was banging the car with his branch.
His premiums going up.
That would be a disaster for his premiums, wouldn't it? Yes. We're talking about car insurance this morning. Loads of you have been in touch because, well, costs are going up. And it can be a really worrying moment when that renewal quote drops. But we're hearing it's getting worse. So here's a scary stat for you. Last year, the average car insurance premium, well, it rocketed by 25%. What does that mean? Well, let's rewind back to between October and December 2022. Then the average cover, that would have cost, well, about £470. A year later, look at this, racking up and up and up and up and up, a lot more. Now, that hike, it's being blamed on extra costs for the insurers themselves. They're talking about things like higher payouts for vehicle thefts, longer repair times, and also the cost of labour and parts for those repairs. And it's younger drivers who are suffering the most, 17 to 20-year-olds in particular, with eye-wateringly high premiums. Drivers like 19-year-old Stefan. He bought his car last month and then had to sell it a few days later because of the high quotes he was getting for cover. Higher costs on Stefan there, and he isn't alone. So many people have been in touch this morning on car insurance. We heard as well Stuart, the car expert, saying, look, do have a go at chatting to your insurer. And actually had a message from Denise in Kent. So her car insurance renewal more than doubled to over £750. She then shopped around, got another quote for £294, so then went back to her original insurer and got the price down to £273. So it is possible. But, God.
Is that like Charlie was saying earlier? How is it justified?
Well, I mean, so look, the Association of British Insurers, they say they get it, but you heard me talking about those particular costs. They say those are all going up by quite a lot. But interestingly, the regulator says they are closely monitoring this. So we'll wait and see, because we've seen lots of interventions in other parts of insurance markets and elsewhere from regulators. So Black Box was mentioned before. Glenn got in touch saying, I got a really good quote, half the price of the others.
black box make the difference. So I saved almost £500. These are big savings.
Barry's saying, I claimed through insurance I was quoted £600 for repair, but paying privately through the same company it was £250. So sometimes people opt to not claim.
And I think it would be interesting. The regulators say they can't do anything about the cost necessarily, but they will look at whether you get a fair price. But it'd be interesting to look at whether they decide that the market's just a bit too complex. You shouldn't have to jump through these kind of hoops to get a fair deal.
But being proactive is key. As
ever. Shop around and call them up.
Thank you, Peter.
And now on BBC One, it's time for Morning Live with Michelle and Sarah.